So after watching Home Alone 2 this week, I decided I would recreate the iron burn that Marv gets on his face. So in order to get the shape, I've drawn around my iron and I've cut it out of cardboard. And then to create the most defined point of the burn, which is at the top, I'm using nose putty, but you can use wax or anything that you find you get on with. And then to stick the putty on, I'm using Mastik Glue. You want to roll in your palm 2 thin pieces of putty. And then taking your Mastik Glue, you just want to trace the outline of the peak of the iron. You need to leave the Mastik Glue to go a little bit tacky before you apply the putty to it, so just wait a few minutes. Then taking your 2 strips, you want to carefully place it directly on top of the mastic. Apply a little bit of pressure with your finger along the strip just to make sure it's secured. Then again, just give yourself a couple of minutes for that just to set in place and dry before you start working into it. The idea of this is so that the middle section looks slightly sunken than the natural skin line, and the outside of the putty needs to just smooth into the skin so it looks more natural. If you don't have a spatula, you can also use an orange wood stick because that has a flat side to it. To flatten the surface sort of smoothly, you kind of want to hold your spatula at a 45-degree angle. Don't hold it too high or you won't get a nice sort of flat surface as you pull the putty backwards. Take your time when doing this because you are pulling away from the centre, so that central line needs to stay relatively straight all the way down. And then once you've done it all the way down, you can go back in and just use your spatula just to smooth it all out. You also don't want this to be too raised off the skin as it won't be as realistic. As you can see, I'm just smoothing the bottom bit really flat to the skin as this is where it fades off. Once you've flattened both sides with your spatula, to get a really smooth finish to it, we're going to use Vaseline. Using a really tiny amount of Vaseline on the flat part of your finger, just smooth down the seams of the putty where it meets the skin, and this will flatten it, making it really smooth. To create the imprint of the iron where the steam holes are, I'm placing 3 little strips of mastic and putty. As before, wait for it to go a little bit tacky before you put the putty on, and then apply a little bit of pressure just to secure them in place. The next thing to do is to colour the putty so it matches your skin tone a little bit more. So I'm just using my MakeUp Forever palette, but you can use any sort of foundation that suits your skin tone. Ideally something that's a little bit full coverage. You want to place it onto the putty and then just feather it onto the skin, and you can use your finger to blend it out, or you can apply the foundation to the entire face, but my boyfriend doesn't like to wear foundation, so I'm only going to apply it to the putty and then feather it out. Depending on how thick your foundation is, it may take a couple of goes over the putty to get a nice coverage. To get rid of the shine, you're going to want to use a translucent powder over everything that you've applied. This will make it more matte and appear more like your natural skin. To create the colour, I'm using a burn wheel, and this consists of 4 shades that you can use to create burns. To start with, I'm using the maroony red shade, and I'm using this on a synthetic brush. I'm applying the product using a patting motion. I find this gives the best coverage. As the product's a grease paint, I find if you drag the brush, you'll see the brush strokes in the product. So this colour needs to be inside the V shape that we've created using the putty and around the little nodules that are on the centre of the head. Having looked at the burn that was created on Marv in Home Alone 2, he has one prominent side where the burn goes down onto the cheek as if there was more pressure. So I decided to do the same, and I've chosen that to be on the left side of the face. So you'll see I take the burn down onto the cheek. But that's why this stage is important, that I fade the colour off on the right at the top towards the eyebrow, and on the left side I take it through the eyebrow. So what you want to do is when you're patting the colour in, you want to blend it into the brow, into the hair, emphasising that the burn on that side has had more pressure applied with the iron. And then in order to match up with what you've already applied to the head, you want to then put your template back up to your face and then just map out the line so that it matches and coincides with the top half. And then it's the same as before, just down that line and blending it out towards the nose. You just want to apply that reddy shade, and then you can just use your fingers to pat out the colour so that it blends nicely and looks quite natural, like a natural burn. If you think logically how a burn works, the pressure is going to become less as it goes down the face. The most prominent section is going to be where your face stands out the most. So for that area, it's obviously the cheek, but as it fades down to the chin, it's going to get lighter, so the pressure of the burn will be less, so it's going to be a lighter shade. You will have noticed in the photo at the beginning, I also added a bit of a battering to the top of the brow and just to the side of the burn. So I'm just taking a little bit of that red underneath the eyes if it's swollen a little bit from the impact. Instant bruising is often varied in colour, so I've taken a little bit of the black, the tiniest bit, and just added that just to the very inner corner of the eye, just to create a little bit more depth to that bruise. Now to add some more dimension to the part we've made at the top of the putty, I'm just pressing a bit of brown eyeshadow just on the outside corners where we've smoothed it down, and what that's going to do is it's going to make it look a little bit more three-dimensional. And then using a highlighter shade, which is like a white colour, I'm going along that central line we created, which is obviously the edge of the burn. And I'm doing the same process on the cheek. So I'm adding the highlighter shade down the edge of the burn next to the red, and then I'm going to put a little bit of the brown shade just next to that. Now I've got my base red on, I'm going in with a deeper red just along the edging of the burn, just to enhance its severity. I'm taking that same red colour just on the bridge of the nose, and I'm also going to take it on the opposite cheek ever so slightly. I'm focusing more on the central part of the bridge of the nose, and then I'm just using tissue to dab off the excess, and my finger again just to blend the edges. You don't want to be too neat, obviously it won't look realistic otherwise. This side of the cheek is only going to be light from the steam, like the heat of the iron. It won't necessarily be from the impact of the iron touching the face, that's why it's a lot lighter. Like I did with the top of the head, I'm just adding a little bit of the shadow just next to the highlight, and this is just going to create a little bit more dimension and make it look more three-dimensional. Coincide with the cheek and the brow cuts, I'm just adding a little bit of a busted lip here. So I'm just using the red that I've used to create the burn, and I'm just doing a slight sort of V shape on the lip, and then I'm just adding a little bit of wound filler inside just to make it look a little bit more deep, and then I've just highlighted the edges. So here I'm creating the busted cheek and brow, and much like before I'm just adding the same red and I'm just patting it on, just creating a sore appearance to the skin. So now I'm just taking some TV blood, and what this is going to do is add weepiness to the skin. As we know with a burn, it often looks weepy and sore. So I'm starting off by applying it to the brow, and again, same method as before, just use your fingers just to blend it out. And this should just disperse the colour nicely and just leave the majority of it in the centre. As you can see, this makes the skin around the cheek look busted and open, and like the blood's rushed to the surface. And now I'm dabbing it into the inside of the burn at the forehead and just around the little pieces of skin that we've put on out of putty. And it is best to do this with your finger, because by doing the patting motion you're forming beads of blood, which makes it look like weepy, sore and really open and moist, and that's exactly what a burn looks like. I'm using two colour bloods here. I'm using one that's really red and one that's more orangey. The orangier one gives you more the weepy look, and the red one obviously gives you the blood colour, so it looks like the beads of blood that have come up afterwards. And it's the mix of the water and the blood that give you that orangey colour. And that's it completed. I hope you've enjoyed.